Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to the bunker. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from Tasha. Let's listen to what Tasha has to say.
Hi Lloyd, my name is Tasha. I am a baptized Jehovah's Witness, current and active. I still watch your videos. I've always watched your videos for a long time now because I feel like I love getting that perspective. And I agree with you in a lot of ways. I wanted to know if you have any information or if you've made a video about Jehovah's sovereignty, how that is the explanation we are given for why there is suffering. I always have wondered why Jehovah really does not or has not just ended everything. If he is almighty and able to, that alone has caused a lot of doubt in my mind, especially having my brother killed in a hit and run, having myself go through all these tragedies and pain. And I realized Jehovah could prevent it, right? I mean, that's where my mind went. And so I just wanted to know if you could ever elaborate on how maybe a rebuttal for why Jehovah's sovereignty and his name is not the basis for why we suffer. Because I am suffering. I suffer a lot because I'm so confused. And I genuinely want to be free, but I feel like I'm scared. I feel like I have felt Jehovah help me in my life. I don't know if you've felt that way. I feel like I have felt Holy Spirit before, help me get through problems. And yet I have felt like Jehovah has miraculously helped me a few times. But the fact that I prayed for my brother to actually come out and be safe before he was hit in the hit and run. So I intuitively knew maybe something wasn't right, and Jehovah did not deliver him to me. So there's that feeling of like, I prayed specifically for it and it didn't happen. And it really threw me and stumbled me, we could say. But really, the fact that I'm grieving and suffering so bad and that my brother's life at 29 was cut short, is that for Jehovah's sovereignty? I need help to understand that.
Well, thank you, Tasha, for your voicemail. And wow, you're a very brave person for leaving a voicemail as an active Jehovah's Witness. I don't think you're the only or first one that's called through to the channel as a Jehovah's Witness. But it's nice to know that the channel's being consumed or seen by people with various backgrounds, including those who identify as Jehovah's Witnesses. You raised some really good points. I will just, I'm afraid, start with the usual disclaimer that I am not a mental health professional, and especially with some of the issues that you have highlighted, namely the fact that you feel scared, you feel as though you're grieving, you feel as though you're suffering. Any time that the situation is in control of you rather than you being in control of the situation, so that you feel helpless and you feel lost or scared in your case, that's the time to seek a mental health professional. I'm not a mental health professional. I do have a few things to say if you're interested in hearing them based on what you've said. But yes, I think the priority is for you to seek help if you're suffering as you say you are. This issue of God's sovereignty, I don't really know that there is anything to do a rebuttal to. It's a claim that's not unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, this is more of a Christian fundamentalist view that all of the suffering that we see is all part of God's plan. And God arranged for suffering and misery and injustice to be erased from our planet by tolerating it for millennia and arranging a human sacrifice. That's fundamentalist Christianity in a nutshell. And Jehovah's Witnesses aren't the only ones who hold that view. Lots of denominations hold that view or a very similar view. And you're right, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know how good the video would be of me just saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. But if I need to do a video, this can be the video. Let's talk about it. God's sovereignty. So God is so insecure about what people think about his power and authority that this convoluted plan needs to be dreamt up, whereby, again, untold billions have to die and suffer and go through unspeakable cruelty for millennia just so he can prove a point. What does it say about God if he's that insecure and, frankly, that interested in what others think about him? Either he is in control of the universe or he isn't. If he's in control of the universe and has the ability to have a universe where people aren't suffering, let's have that universe. To suggest that we all need to suffer so that his authority and his sovereignty can be, what's the word, vindicated. It's just ridiculous. But more to the point, you talk about your brother being killed and the fact that you prayed to get your brother back safely. And I can understand this will be an incredibly emotional thing to talk about. And I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that I don't want to insult you in any way, shape, or form. You've asked me for my opinion on this particular issue, and I'm going to give it as diplomatically as possible. Your brother was killed in a hit and run. First of all, my condolences. It must have been an incredibly traumatic experience to go through, to lose your brother in those circumstances. To lose your brother in any circumstances would be traumatic, but to not have the chance to say goodbye, to have your last encounter without knowing what was to come, without getting that kind of closure that you might get under different circumstances, I can imagine being incredibly upsetting and traumatic for you. I wasn't involved in a hit and run, but I was hit once by an armoured vehicle travelling at about 40 miles per hour when I was crossing the road to get the coach to college. I write about this in my book, The Reluctant Apostate, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on the channel before. And in my book, I grapple with what happened that day and the fact that I'm hit by this van that's going at a decent speed that should have killed me. And onlookers described that I literally went flying. So it wasn't like it just brushed against me and I fell over. I was hurled through the air by a van, by an armoured security van. And I picked myself up off the tarmac, feeling very embarrassed, I remember, and got on the coach, got on the bus to college, and only then did I start to black out. And fortunately, my fellow students had the presence of mind to make sure that instead of me going to college, I actually got taken to the local hospital to get some medical attention. But it was a weird thing to just get up off the road, brush yourself off, and get on the bus after that happens. And I was a believing Jehovah's Witness when this happened, and for years I grappled with this question of, was that God? You know, was that the angels saving my life? I can imagine even telling this story now on this channel, there will probably be some viewers saying, yes, Lloyd, yes, that was the angels saving you. That was God saving you. Your life needed to be saved. Well, let's think about that for a moment. God saves my life and folds his arms through the Holocaust. I don't want to worship that God. I don't want to worship a God who lets 9 million children die every year before they reach the age of 5, but saves Lloyd Evans when a truck hits him. I don't want to worship a God who lets millions of people die from COVID, allows all sorts of brutality, sex crimes to be perpetrated on a daily, hourly, minute-by-minute basis. There is evil, there is unspeakable cruelty going on all around the world, all of which is just due to people's electrochemical signals flashing around in their brain, telling them to do certain things, and God could stop that from happening. He could stop those electrochemical signals that's causing someone to do something despicable to another human being. He could if he wanted to. Oh no, I'm going to stop this fan from hitting this dude back in 1997 or whenever it was. Don't want to worship that God. I just don't. And I understand why people find comfort in this sort of thinking. But just as it will give some people comfort to think, oh, I have a guardian angel, God helped me in this particular area, you then have to ask the question, well, what about all the times he didn't help? What about all the times he didn't step in and save the day? What do we say to the parents of the 9 million children who die every year before they reach the age of 5? Has God looked down on them in some way? You know, the minute you start embarking down this road, if you give it any serious thought, the whole thing just collapses on scrutiny, if I'm being honest. And there's actually a song, I won't show it on the channel, you can go and look it up yourself. There's a song by a guy called Tim Minchin called Thank You God. And if you watch that song, if you listen to it, there's a performance, I think, at the Royal Albert Hall with this orchestra. And it's just this brilliantly worded song that sums up the arrogance of suggesting that certain lives are important to God, but others aren't. Certain ailments are important for God to cure, and others aren't. Honestly, the whole thing makes so much more sense once we realize there isn't or shouldn't be a God doing all this. If there is a God who's intervening selectively, his priorities are terrible and he doesn't deserve our worship. Bad things happen to people. Good things happen to people. Tragic things happen to people. There is no rhyme or reason to it. It's just life. And I find accepting that and embracing that far more meaningful than the confusion that I used to have to grapple with when dealing with these issues. You know, especially thinking about losing my mother at the age of 21, you're left with these questions of, well, hang on, what did Mum do wrong, you know? If God is helping other people with their illnesses and he's miraculously stepping in these other cases, what did Mum do wrong? Why couldn't Mum have gotten that as well, you know? The minute you free yourself from this dogma, this fanciful thinking, the more things just start to make sense finally. And you're able to appreciate the good things in life without having to make excuses for anything, without having to square the circle. Life is just as it is. We make the most of it. We comfort each other when we fall. We help each other when we go through trauma. And for me, it's far more helpful just to recognize that bad things happen and good things happen. And there doesn't have to be any explanation for it. Certainly not this silly explanation about God's sovereignty, which even you seem to be struggling with. And if it helps to at least hear me say, you're right, it doesn't make sense, well, I'm happy to say that on camera and hopefully give you a little bit of validation. But I would just suggest giving this more thought. And that's not to say, by the way, for viewers who do take comfort in the thought of an interventionist God helping them, I'm still fine with you enjoying my content. If this particular belief brings you comfort, I don't lose any sleep at all. I'm not interested in changing people's minds on this, but hopefully you can understand why I personally fail to subscribe to that kind of thinking. So I hope some or all that I've said there is helpful for you. Again, thank you for calling in. If you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want me to broadcast your message on my channel. But that's all I have time for. Thank you so much for watching.